Hey there, I'd just like to ask before the video starts, if you like what you see, please give us a click on the like and subscribe buttons. Hi everybody, I'm Karl Wells. Today we're offering you something a little bit different. My guest is Jennifer Guy, former CBC journalist. But actually I'm her guest because Jennifer decided she wanted to interview me about my new memoir, Openly Karl. This is part one of her two-part interview with me. I hope you enjoy it.
Openly Karl considers the expanse of Karl Wells' career and the nuances of his personal life, including coming to terms with being gay during a less tolerant period of Newfoundland and Labrador's history and throughout the subsequent decades of social change. It's at times fascinating and funny, at others harrowing and heartbreaking. It's all of that. It's fascinating, funny, harrowing and heartbreaking. I first want to ask you, Karl, what's the reaction?
The reaction to the book has been wonderful. I'm getting a lot of people telling me that they found out things about me they didn't know. A lot of them say I've been very brave in writing what I did, but now I have to say I really don't feel I've been brave. I set out to tell my story and everything that happened to me during my life and to be honest about it and cover as many bases as I could, and that's all I did really.
But I think it took guts, and to me guts and bravery are sort of together, because you did reveal a lot of your personal life that not everybody would be willing to do as honestly and frankly as you did.
Yeah, I can't say that I was entirely, what's the word, calm about what I was writing, because in fact there were times when I was writing things that had troubled me, where I had to get up and just drop what I was doing, stop writing and get out of my office and maybe go back to it the next day or whatever, because in a sense, I guess I was resurrecting a lot of ghosts from the past and, things that weren't pleasant. And I'm referring to, incidents of homophobia and,
yes,
and bullying, that sort of thing. It wasn't pleasant revisiting.
Certainly
but
not.
I felt I had to write it.
Yes, as a catharsis or as a sharing of life for others who may experience the same thing?
Well, as a sharing,
yeah.
I think it was important to call out certain people and tell people about certain incidents. I thought that was important, particularly for younger LGBTQ people today, to know a little bit about what it was like for me, but not so much me, for what my generation, the baby boomers, went through.
Yes, yes.
Because we did go through, when you consider the things that happened during my lifetime. When I was a young kid realizing I was gay, homosexuality was illegal.
Yes.
In fact, there were people sitting in jails
Yes.
because they were gay. That's all. They hadn't done anything.
Yes, I'm going to in a moment walk through your path, your journey
Yeah.
with your homosexuality, and it did start at an extremely young age
Yeah.
for you. But before, I want a special section on that. But what struck me most, and you acknowledge it in the book, the irony that little Karl Wells did not want his sister to take his picture, didn't want the Sparrow fella to take your picture. You shone from a camera, and yet you've made a marvelous livelihood out of it.
I have no idea why I didn't want my picture taken, but that was my first memory. I was 4 years of age. My sister came out. I was sitting on her front steps, and my sister was going to take my picture with her brownie camera.
Yeah.
And I rebelled. There was no way I was going to let her take my picture. I didn't want my picture taken, and I got up and I ran away. And she chased me and eventually got a very bad picture, blurry picture of me. But
Yes, it's in the book.
yeah, I have no idea why. No, I didn't. Now, part of that may have been the fact that my sister was, at the time, I was 4, she was probably about 12. Mm-hmm. She was older than me. And my mother had given her the responsibility, sometimes she gave her the responsibility of looking after me.
Right.
And sometimes my sister asked me to do things or told me to do things that I didn't want to do. And I felt, because she was my sister, that I didn't have to listen to her. I had to listen to my mother and my father. Well, why should I have to listen to my sister? So we quite often,
you
clashed.
heads.
And so that may have been part of it too. Yeah. But no, I didn't like having my picture taken.
We'll deal with Betty later too. When she was advised, or you advised her of your homosexuality, she said, "Oh, she's a psychiatrist." But we'll talk about that in that section. But it struck me still as ironic that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a conflict, that a person can be shy, and as you said in the Humberlog interview in Corner Brook, you are a very private person. It's not a contradiction that a shy or private person can still have a public life, because it's your profession.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say at least half of the people I worked with in the business, very shy people, very shy people. And when we would have to do public appearances, I know for some of them it was very, very difficult. It was difficult for me in the beginning. I did not like doing public appearances. It's one thing to sit in front of a camera, this inanimate object,
Yes.
and talk to it, but it's an entirely different thing when you're sitting there and you've got 100 or 200 people in front of you.
But you got over it.
I did get over it, yeah.
But it took work?
Yeah, that took work, yeah. Now, I had no problem going on stage and acting and pretending to be somebody else, because when you're doing theater, you're in character, and you're not really paying any attention to the audience, and they're in darkness anyway, you can't see them. So that's different. But when you are being yourself and you're speaking to a group of people, it's different. Yeah.
Yes, I'm interested to talk in a moment about your radio drama and that evolution into television, but I'm trying to do it a bit chronologically, so I'd like to start with school. And you had beautiful chapter titles in your book, and the one where you go to school is called Abandoned and Betrayed. And what a traumatic experience it was for you to go to school. You did not want to go. No,
I didn't. And again, I'm not really sure why. I have a good idea, which is, I lived alone with my mother until I reached school age. I didn't interact with other children. I had created my own world, and it comprised reading books or looking at books, looking at the pictures in books mostly, or magazines, and watching TV and listening to the radio, and watching my mother as she did her housework or did her baking or was preparing supper, that sort of thing. That was my world. And the only kids I saw were the children I would see on television on Howdy Doody, for example, or Romper Room, you know. But they were in that box. They were on that TV screen. And so the idea of having to leave this nest and go into this strange place with all of these strange people, it terrified me. And I didn't go to school for the first week or so.
Yeah.
And I would hide when it was time to go to school.
Under your mother's bed.
I would hide, in different places. Yeah, that's right. I'd hide in a cupboard or...
And your dad finally had to come and drag you out by the scruff of the neck.
Well, my mother actually was the one who finally got me out from under the bed by terrifying me. I mean, my mother had an explosive temper. You didn't see it very often. I only saw it twice in my life. I inherited that temper. Thank God it's only shown up in my life, and you know, I'm old now. It's only shown up in my life 3 times. Thank God. Her father had a temper, and I inherited it. But she just blew, and she got me out from under the bed just by scaring the hell out of me. Yeah. And so I went to school. My father drove me to school. And I remember going up the hallway, and I remember the smell of the school and the wax or whatever they were using on the floor. And he put me in and said, "This is Karl," to the teacher, and all of these other children were looking at me. And he closed the door, and he walked up the hall, and I thought, where are you going? You know? I
that's why you said abandoned and betrayed.
That's why I felt abandoned, yeah.
And then to go ahead many years, then your school experience was bullying, and you got swarmed. I mean, it was not a pleasant experience except for art school.
Yeah, art class was my salvation. I loved art class, and the system that I went through, the United Church school system, starting at Harrington, Holloway, United Junior High, Prince of Wales Collegiate. Every single year I had a brilliant art teacher, all, you know, well-known Newfoundland artists, Frank Witherspoon, Frank Lapointe, Gwen Seary, Reginald Shepard. All of these people taught me art, and I loved it. It was like going into another realm, you know, and being able to create something and learn how to create and make it better and better and better and better. And
that was your only comfort zone, I would think, in school, because the principal humiliated you, and those girls that swarmed you. I thought that was just such a dreadful experience.
That was a horrible experience.
It was.
Yeah. I guess they clued into the fact that I wasn't that I was gay, and you know, I wasn't showing any interest in girls like the other boys, and I guess they thought, you know, here's somebody we can razz and really, you know, do something.
Girls that age can be pretty mean.
Yeah, they were incredibly. They were mean girls. Yeah. And
anyway, it didn't hold you back in your wonderful career, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And what I think it's the buttress of your career is determination. And you went after every new step in your life with a methodology. You researched, you entered it with great knowledge of the spectrum of things required of you to get into that door. It started with VOWR. When you changed the Friday night stuff, you were with VOWR 69 to 73, ETV, Educational Television at Memorial University 72, and then CBC 75 on. And all the way, you were growing and expanding your creativity and the opportunity for these media outlets to explore new audiences and bring them in. I mean, you've got to be proud of your career.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. And I get a kick out of occasionally tuning into VOWR and hearing a program that I created.
Yeah. I played it this morning, actually, getting ready to come, and they were playing classical music, and I
Yeah.
thought, Carl can
Yeah.
pronounce the composer's name for sure.
Yeah, and not only that, but created when I was about, 17 years of age or 18, I started there when I was 16.
Yes.
That's the first time
Yeah.
I went on radio.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
But you said, entering that phase of your life, that you're motivated by the love of the human voice.
Very
Can you
much
talk
so,
about
yeah.
that a bit more?
Well, when I was a kid, we had this 1950s floor model console. It had a radio, only AM, and a record player, and which back then most of our collection was 78 RPM records.
Yeah, I know that size. Yeah,
But the radio was in the middle, and the speakers were in the middle underneath the radio dials. And I loved sitting there and turning this dial and tuning in, CJON, VOCM, VOAR, VOWR. Those were about the only stations we had. There was no FM then; it was just AM. And I think it was CJON. They had a show that would come on midday called Art Baker's Notebook, and Art Baker was a broadcaster from, he was broadcasting from Hollywood. And this was probably some syndicated thing that, CGON would get, and they'd play it, to fill 15 minutes. But he was a commentator, but he always told stories, human interest stories, that always had, a happy ending, and started with somebody struggling, in life, and then turning their life around, and there was a happy ending.
Yeah.
But it was his voice. He had this beautiful, resonant voice.
yeah.
And I would listen to that voice, and it, to me, it was beautiful. And it was the same if I was listening to a woman broadcaster who had a beautiful voice, who spoke, with great diction and clarity and quality. The voice is a wonderful instrument. It's a wonderful instrument when you hear somebody singing beautifully, but it's also a wonderful instrument when you hear somebody speaking beautifully.
Well, it's clear in the book how scientific, I would say, your approach was to developing your voice. I don't think most listeners really appreciate how complex and challenging it is to have the right voice. You talk about tonality, about pacing, about emotion, all these things you learned as you were going into drama, mainly.
Yeah, well, I mean, radio acting was a great help too.
Yeah.
Because in radio acting, and you're playing characters, and the only way to, indicate that you're really old or, is through the voice, because they don't have anything else to go by. There's no picture. And it's a great medium too, because of course they call it the theater of the mind, and people imagine what you look like and what the setting is and so forth. That's the other thing I liked about listening to Art Baker's Notebook, because I would imagine all these places, that he would talk about in his little chats. But radio acting was great, because I learned how to do accents and British accents, American accents, whatever. Yeah.
And then you were mimicking a lot, including JFK, and that was quickly terminated upon learning his death.
Yes, that's right. I as a little kid, I would amuse my parents and their friends by doing John F. Kennedy's voice, or, singing like Elvis Presley or whatever.
I was going to ask you to do JFK, but I see in your book you don't do that anymore, so I won't ask you.
JFK.
But I do recall, and then I'm going to go in more detail about CBC in a moment, but I do recall when I worked with you at educational television in the early 70s, you were always over in a corner with a tape recording, taping your voice, listening back, taping your voice, listening, mastering it. I mean, you were so, as I said, methodical in how you mastered your skill.
Yeah.
I mean, you were very focused.
Very focused, I spent a lot of my life studying other people I admired, You know, a lot of people who worked with me back, for example, in the radio acting days would say, you know, well, you were so quiet. You just sat by the side and paid attention to what was going on, but you never kind of engaged. You were always just sort of sitting there taking everything in. And that's true because I was learning. I was trying to soak it all up. And I learned a lot by operating that way.
Plus, you were shy in that environment.
I was shy.
They counted Ian Many when he asks you to pop up off the sideline to do something really electric, and you do it and you pop back, go right back to where you were, like not talking to anybody. But this other Karl came alive when you were the actor, Karl.
That's right. When I was being somebody else, I had no problem.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, but I was shy. I still am, really. I find it very difficult to go up to. I'll see somebody I want to go up and talk to, and it takes a lot for me to go up and say hello.
And once you do, it's a comfortable experience.
Yeah.
Karl, now your experience with CBC is quite something, and I'm going to get in detail in a moment. But when I read about the Archbishop coming to CBC Radio in St. John's, and tell me what the staff did.
Well, they all knelt down and kissed his ring.
I just find that extraordinary. How did that come about?
Well, that was not something I had witnessed personally, but Harold Morris, who was the scheduling officer for the announcers when I went to work at CBC, and CBC had a huge stable of announcers back in those days. Must have been, you know, almost 20 announcers. He said that, you know, back in the day, not much before I started there, on the top floor of the CBC building, the TA building on Duckworth Street. Yes. What was a beautiful Art Deco building. Unfortunately, it's gone to rack and ruin since. On the top floor of that building, the entire staff would line up along the hallway, and the Archbishop would make an annual visit, and he would, you know, meet each member of staff, and as he went down the line, each member of staff would kneel and kiss his ring.
Just extraordinary. The other thing I really liked when I read, I don't know if you can remember the first words you said on CBC Radio. It was around Aubrey Mack's time. Can you give it to us?
Yeah. That was the time signal.
Official time signal. Yeah. Can you say it?
I don't know whether I remember it.
This is I really want to hear
from
you
the
say.
National Research Council in Ottawa. The official time signal. It's 1:30 p.m. Newfoundland Daylight Savings Time. At the beginning of the long dash, it's 1:30 p.m. Newfoundland Savings Time.
You say that in your sleep. Everybody who ever listened to CBC Radio remembers that.
Yeah. And after I left radio to go to television, they had me on tape. So I continued doing it for years after I'd left radio to go to television, and eventually they replaced me with somebody.
That was the start of your legacy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Now, Karl, my observation of your relationship with CBC is a love-hate relationship. So, how do you feel about that?
Well, hate is a strong word, Jennifer.
Well, appropriate in some of your accounts.
Well, love, mostly love, because when I was growing up, I absolutely adored CBC. You know, I would listen to Max Ferguson on the radio, doing his voices and everything, and I listened to the radio drama on CBC Radio, and I watched CBC television, and to my mind, working at CBC was the ultimate. I mean, if you managed to get a job at the CBC, you had made it in broadcasting in Canada. And so there was I had a lot of love for the CBC, and I was thrilled when I finally got a permanent job there. And I back then, I mean, I say in the book, when I went into the CBC building on University Avenue, it was like going into CBS in Hollywood, or, you know,
Yeah.
some big Hollywood studio, because there were people running around in costumes. You know, they had costume designers, they had makeup artists, they had carpenters who built sets, and they were doing variety shows, dramas, not just news. News was a small part of the operation. Now news is all they have left. Mm-hmm. But back then it was something.
It was a hopping place.
It was a hopping place.
Yes.
And it was a great support to our Newfoundland culture.
Absolutely.
And people involved in the culture industry in this province. You know, a lot of people work for CBC, and either full-time or part-time, and were supported by the CBC. So it was great, and I was thrilled to work there. And I thought when I went to work there that it would be a very liberal environment, where nobody would make any judgments about you.
Yes.
And I quickly realized that there was a darker side, and there were several people there who were clearly homophobic.
Yes.
And didn't mind letting you know that they were homophobes. And so I just thought, you know, this is not the Shangri-La I thought it was.
Yes, you said at one point CBC tolerated but did not accept homosexuality.
Yeah, that's the feeling I had. Yeah, in that earlier version of the CBC.
Yes.
I'm not saying that the CBC is anything like that today. It isn't, and thank God for that. But back then, yeah, it was. I thought that was a reasonable way of describing it.
You were very specific in citing John Furlong as your tormentor.
Yeah.
Seems to me he had it out for you, according to what is in the book. He had it out for you in the beginning. He tried his best to compromise your career. He talked about taking the weather out, the community segment out, and you tried to take a charge to human resources. None of it was successful. It was a bit of a farce by this account. But is your attitude to John now one of revenge by exposing him so much, or catharsis to get it out, or to...
No, I just think that he was a troubled human being, and unfortunately, whatever he had inside him, that was, you know, malevolent.
Yeah.
He decided to make me, you know, a target, and vent his malevolence on me.
I would like to go in our next segment back to the love side and talk about your audience and the enormous adulation you received from your audience, and we'll talk about that in our next session.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Karl, for allowing me to continue our conversation in light of your book, Openly Karl, which is a wonderful testimony to your life up to 27 and to 2010 when you married Larry.
Yeah.
And so our conversation is confined to that period largely, but we've covered your childhood, your time at school, which was, except for art class, horrific, and then your time with CBC and your other wonderful career gains, and how much you appreciate and love your audience. And so now we're going to talk about something that I was surprised to read, that you also suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yes.
I love how you described it. It's an unreasonable cognitive shit show. That's what Karl calls OCD. Can you explain briefly what OCD is to our audience?
Well, you know, people have mild cases of OCD where, you know, you feel like you have to go back and check the iron a couple of times to make sure it's turned off. But mine was considerably worse than that. And mine also manifested in unwanted thoughts, intrusive thoughts, things that my brain was generating that I, had no control over. And I would have these terrible thoughts that I was going to do. For example, I could be sitting here and a thought would come into my head. I'm going to lean over and I'm going to slap Jennifer in the face, right on here on live TV, that kind of a thing. And I knew I wouldn't do it, but the thought was implanted in my head, and it wouldn't go away. It would recur and recur and recur. And it was almost like there would be a voice saying, "You're going to do it. You're going to do it. You're going to," Or it could be something like self-harm. I'd be on a balcony, on a high-rise, and a voice would come into my head and say, "You're going to jump off that balcony, jump." It would put me in a panic, and but it started happening when I was at work, and I would be on the air doing the weather, and this voice would come into my head, and the voice would be, "You're going to look at that camera and say to all those people, you're all a bunch of blankety blank," some foul, obscene word. And it would just, grip me while I was live on camera. And I knew I wasn't going to do it. Again, I knew I wasn't going to do it. And I would struggle against it, hoping, that it would go away. And don't forget, when you're doing the weather, as you know, you have to remember all of this information about where this low pressure system is going to go and where this high is going to move out and what this temperature is going to be and that temperature. So I'm juggling all of this in my head, and at the same time, these thoughts are popping into my head, that I'm going to say something, swear at the audience or do something obscene, haul down my pants in front of the camera. And so, I had to go ahead and do the weather under those conditions, and it was as I say, it's like a shit show in your head.
And you had already been through a hard period in your life where you had to keep homosexuality a secret because of jeopardizing your position at work. Now you had OCD, which could equally impact.
I wasn't keeping it a secret at work. I just wasn't talking about it.
Right. Acknowledge.
Yeah.
Yes. Nor were you talking about OCD.
No, God, no, because I couldn't talk about OCD at work because they'd think, well, he obviously has mental illness and we can't have him on television. There's no telling what he'll do, because people are ignorant, they don't realize.
So is that why you didn't go into treatment immediately?
Yes, that was part of it, but also I didn't want anybody to, this was so many years ago now, I didn't want anybody to possibly see me going into a psychiatrist's office, who recognized me, which they would, everybody in the province knew my face, and then for a rumor to go around that, I was being treated for some kind of mental illness, and, I just thought it would jeopardize my career.
But finally you did seek treatment, enter Dr. Lydia Hatcher.
I sought treatment when I reached the lowest point. And the lowest point was when I thought my life is not worth living. I would sooner be dead. That's when I sought treatment. I was at rock bottom. And I went to my GP, and she was very, happy and cheerful when she saw me and said, "What can I do for you today?" And I sat down in the corner and I just unburdened myself. And I was crying and crying. And by the end of it, she was crying. We were both crying. And she said, "We're going to get you help." And so eventually we found a medication and a dosage that worked. Thank God, because I was lucky that way too. This medication doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for me. And thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God, thank God.
There's also a part of OCD that makes you...
this is a lifetime thing now. I have
Yes.
to be on it for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Because if I don't take it, I will go back
Yes.
to having those thoughts.
And it's obviously working with a comfort.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's also, from what I understand, an aspect of OCD which makes you methodical, meticulous. So that has been a part of your success in your career, is your attention to detail. But my question to you is, has this OCD been like a double-edged sword, a real problem for you, but also a benefit in how it makes you think in some arenas?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, you're right about me being methodical and all of that, but I have no idea whether that's connected to OCD.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought of it being that way, but I suppose it's possible. Yeah, I suppose it's possible.
Well, I guess the good part of all that is behind you and it's managed. But
Yes.
what a major issue in your life.
Yes, and I would urge anybody out there to, you know, nobody's going to judge you. Go seek help.
And you
Because
did.
there's lots of people. There's lots of us out there. There are lots of people with, you know, who have obsessive compulsive disorder.
Now, I would like to switch now, Karl, to talk about your family, your friends, and your influencers. I know you were very fond of Gordon Pinsent, who played a big influencing role when you were younger in your early stage, and you loved Dr. Kildare on TV, and Sir Michael Redgrave gave you a big wink. You've had wonderful exposure to people who've really helped you be inspired on your path.
Yeah, yeah. You know, well, as far as Richard Chamberlain and Gordon Pinsent were concerned, I was attracted to them because
Yes.
they were beautiful-looking men. You know, I imagined myself in a romantic relationship with Richard Chamberlain. You know,
You're not the only one, I'm sure.
yeah, and Gordon Pinsent too. But I was lucky enough to get to work with Gordon eventually in a musical in which I had a small part, Music Man, and that was wonderful. Yeah, the Sir Michael Redgrave story I tell in the book, I thought about, you know, not telling it. You know, I have been lucky enough to meet some celebrities in my life, some, you know, big name stars, but I didn't want to make it seem like I was bragging. You know, oh, I met this one and I met that one, and but the Michael Redgrave story was kind of cute, and it related to me being gay. I went to interview him at the Battery Hotel where he was staying, and they were here, a bunch of a troupe of UK actors were here doing a Shakespearean performance at the Arts and Culture Centre. And John O'Mara, who was producing Weekend AM, and I was the first host of Weekend AM, we started that show together. He had sent me up to get an interview with Sir Michael Redgrave. He didn't think I'd get it because Redgrave had been in Toronto and Peter Zosky had interviewed him, and Peter Zosky afterwards said, I'm never going to interview that man again. He's a horrible individual and a horrible interview, nasty, and I never want to see him again. So they didn't think I was going to get the interview.
Yeah.
But I did get an interview. I asked his assistant, and his assistant went over, and Sir Michael looked at me and smiled and, you know, invited me over. I sat down and I interviewed him for a long time. And then, you know, as we got into the interview, I realized, oh my God, this guy is attracted to me. He's like giving me the eye, right? He had a real twinkle in his eye, and you know, gaydar, as they call it, was pretty much fully developed by this time.
Yes.
And I realized this guy is attracted to me. He's coming on to me, right? And I was, 21, and he was probably 70 at the time. And so anyway, I thought, I'm going to have to extricate myself from this situation.
And you got the interview.
As politely as I can, but I got the interview, and everybody was shocked when I went back to the station with my tape.
I'd like to talk now about probably, and I'm sure I'm correct, the three most important people in your life, and that's your mother, your father, and Larry. Mm-hmm. I'll start with your mother. You described her in the book as your biggest fan. She was so proud of you.
Oh, she was. Oh my God, yeah. Everywhere she went, she said, I'm the weatherman's mother. And she loved it when people, of course, told her, oh, I love your son, and I watch him every night. And I was happy that I could give her that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she gave you more than that. You say she was mimicking. She was in the theatre side of you. She did a lot of mimicking.
Yeah, she was a great mimic. She would mimic, ladies she met at church, and she would mimic Jackie Gleason. Yeah. Everybody, and relatives. She'd do relatives, and.
So you picked up a bit of that.
I guess that. I mean, she definitely had the performance gene, and a wonderful dancer, wonderful singer, and she could even she died with Alzheimer's, but almost right up until the end, she could remember the lyrics to every song she ever learned in her life.
But your account of her passing is it's very moving. I'll share it with our viewers. As you mentioned, she passed away from Alzheimer's. But on her final day, you and Larry went back to the hospital to see her for a second time. Karl writes, Mom was lying on the bed as we'd left her, wearing a simple hospital smock with bed sheets drawn up to just below her neck. She remained wide-eyed, staring upward. Her hair, once a prominent and attractive feature of her appearance, was now a sparse, delicate grey fringe, framing her thin but mostly unlined face. Mom was breathing in and out through her mouth very deliberately. Each time she exhaled, her cheeks filled like balloons as she blew the air out. I held her hand, you write, and thought about the past, the happy past, all our joking and joyous laughter, our trips to Baring Park, to downtown and lunches at Marty's, the sweet shop and Woolworths. I thought, too, about the nearly 3 decades she'd spent raising us, the time she spent cooking and baking, cleaning, ironing, and sewing. She had given so much of herself to Betty, Lynn, Len, and me. I told Mom how much I loved her. And then, further on this page, she starts to actually pass away, and Larry says to you, she's dying now. Talk to her. Holding my mother's hand, you write, and leaning in, I softly spoke into her ear and said, It's okay, Mom. Don't be afraid. You're going to be with Dad and your Mom and Dad and all your brothers and sisters, and we love you very much, Mom. Don't be afraid. I love you, Mom. Then, for the first time in 2 years, my mother smiled. She drew her last breath and exhaled quietly. An unexpectedly fast yet very peaceful death. Larry hugged me tightly. We stood and looked at Mom's frail, now lifeless body. Just Mom and the two of us. As I looked, I thought, this was my mother, and I'm so grateful this woman gave birth to me, so grateful she raised me. We felt sorrow, but were happy that she was finally free, released from her cruelest phase of Alzheimer's. Our dear Mom is now in a much better place. Karl, that's just such a moving account of saying goodbye to someone who you love so much. But when I was reading it, I'm trying to talk again about serendipity in my mind and trying to weave your major life events together. When your father died, it left your mother at the age of 58, a widow. And you had plans, which I'm sure if you pursued them, to go to the mainland and get higher up in CBC.
Yes.
But you said, someone has to stay and stay with my mother. And look at how your life has turned out to be here. But had you not stayed to be with her, and you had gone to Toronto, we would all be missing you. But it's sort of a serendipity. I mean, out of a horrible thing of your father passing came a positive thing.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, I haven't thought much about that, but you're right. If Mom had been well, and if my father hadn't died in a terrible car crash, I probably would have ended up on the mainland. I probably would have, you know, made a career up there. Certainly I was encouraged to go to Toronto by several people. But once that happened, when Dad left Mom and she was on her own, and he had done everything for her, she was really incapable of looking out for her own affairs at that stage.
Yes.
She needed somebody to support her. I just felt I had to stay. And I have no regrets. I'm glad I did.
I want to talk about your father now, and if you can do it, I'd be grateful, because you talk about the Wells look. Your father had a look. What did the look mean, and can you do it?
The look is just, you know, and and all his brothers had it.
Yeah.
He had a
What does
brother.
It mean, like, you're kidding, or that's silly, or what does it mean?
Well, it's just it's an intimidating kind of look, you know. It's like, oh, I don't think I want to tangle with that person. His brother was a United Church minister, my Uncle Roland. He was the minister out in Brigus for years and years and years and years. And he had that look too. And
it's funny how things are genetic like that.
yeah, but he had the additional weight of the clerical collar.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
which made it even more imposing.
Yeah. I note in the book you say the only time your father was ever in a plane was in a coffin.
That's right.
And what a shock, that horrid accident.
Yeah.
He had a stroke and went into an intersection.
Yeah.
In Florida.
Yeah. He was at an intersection in Fort Myers, Florida. They were on their way to, I think they were on their way to Disneyland or Disney World or whatever. And he just passed out and slumped over the wheel at an intersection, and the car started edging out.
Yeah.
And when my uncle realized, he was sitting next to Dad, realized what was happening, he tried to reach over and stop the car, but it was too late, and they were hit by a tractor trailer, and Dad was killed instantly. He was only 60.
Yes. I get the impression from looking at your mother and your father in the book that he was a little bit more distant to you than your mother. Am I right to think that? Or expressed his love differently?
Not distant. I wouldn't say distant, but he had a different way of showing his affection. He wasn't the kind of dad who took me out and, you know, we played games together, or, you know, he didn't take me to movies or anything like that. I spent my time with him when he was working in the store, and I would work in the store with him, and we'd have conversations, and he would teach me things and tell me things. And then I spent a lot of time delivering groceries with him, going to wholesalers and that sort of thing. And we were always talking, and he would taught me about politics and everything.
Speaking of talking and sharing your life with somebody, I'd like to talk about Larry. And you say, if you're very fortunate, an extraordinary person may enter your life at some point, a person with whom you connect on multiple levels. You may share a similar sense of humor, political views, artistic sensibility, etc., and that person will become a friend like no other. They will lift you up, enable you to see beyond the narrow confines of your life, and encourage you to be better. My husband Larry is such a friend. So I think for you guys it was love at first sight.
Well, it was love at first sight, yeah.
Yeah.
Back in 1980, and we've been together 46 years, and it's been a wonderful experience, and our love really has grown the longer we've been together, and we're, you know, inseparable. We do everything together, go everywhere together. You know, he's thinking something and thinking of something he's going to ask me, and I'll answer before he even, you know, we're totally connected.
And he supports you enormously. He supported you especially through OCD.
He was a great support. He's been a great support through the dark periods of my life, you know, the time I was being bullied at work, and also through the OCD period. Wouldn't have gotten through any of that without him and his support. So he's meant everything to me, and I've been there for him too.
Oh, I'm sure. What do you think it is that makes you have such a strong bond? It's almost exceptionally strong.
I suppose the fact that we both had to endure similar experiences in our lives. You know, we're both gay. We were both terrified of what might happen to us, and both hoping that we'd find somebody we could share our lives with, and you know, be in a solid monogamous relationship for a long time, and so that's worked out for both of us, and you know, our meeting was you know, thank God we met. You know, I like to think it was meant to happen.
Your destiny. You said something beautiful, and when you count your wedding in the book, it's just at the very end of the book.
There's serendipity again. You know,
serendipity.
if I hadn't gone into that bar that night, I wouldn't have met him.
Yes. Serendipity has been very kind to you.
Yeah.
You said, what I feel and remember with that great clarity is being at the altar with Larry as we said our vows. It was those precious moments, placing rings on each other's fingers, our embrace, our kiss. And unlike the first time we kissed, almost 30 years before, this time it wasn't impulsive. It was expected and symbolic. A statement weighted with years of shared love and shared life. As our lips touched gently, briefly, we acknowledged our survival as a gay couple despite daunting odds. We turned to face our guests for a moment. I couldn't take my eyes off Larry. Smiling the most ecstatic smile, he looked happier than I'd ever seen him before. My joy mirrored his. We stood delighted to let everyone share our happiness and pride. We two, deeply in love. We two who made it. What a delightful way to end your book. It's on such a positive note. And I'd like to conclude...
Wonderful memory.
Yes, I'm sure. We'll stay with you forever. My last question is, when someone has read this book and they read that last page and they've been through this journey with you, what do you want them to think or feel to take with them? Well,
I guess it depends on who is speaking. But if it's somebody in the LGBTQ community, I'd like them to take away, you know, or say, wow, that's what it was like for him and his generation.
Yes.
And that's, you know, what we don't have to worry about today.
Yes.
And for anybody else, I would just like them to say, that was worth reading. That was a worthwhile read.